This exercise is going to be working with more color and also using Photoshop to develop different patterns of color. So similar to the exercises from the last module, we're going to be using layers primarily to achieve this effect. And the artwork you see here on the left is a large color field pattern painting done by a contemporary artist, Jeff Depner. And I'm not sure if he's using Photoshop or another digital tool to develop these base images or develop guide images or to experiment with color before he does these paintings, but it's totally possible to work with color and to develop patterns that are similar to these in Photoshop. And so that's what we're going to be working with in this exercise. Now, in this module, you're going to be looking at a lot of different artists and artworks that are looking at color and looking at very abstract versions of color and also pattern. And where we're going to start with this exercise is that we're going to be abstracting from an image that you've captured in real life. So again, you're going to be using your portrait to develop an abstract pattern and to pull color from and apply color to. And the reason why we're doing this is because even though you're seeing all these different artists that are working with color and doing all these abstract things, most of the time they are still connecting those abstractions to something, I guess, a little bit more tangible. So something that is maybe rooted in an idea, or maybe it's an abstraction of some kind of visual form or some kind of representative form, or they're looking at different theories of color, and they're working with the way that different colors might evoke different emotions in viewers, what different colors might symbolize or signify. So even though a lot of these works are very abstract, for the most part, they are still based on some either tangible form or some tangible idea, which is kind of, I guess that isn't really possible to have a tangible idea, but they're still abstracted from something. So it isn't like an artist woke up and was just like, pink, and then just painted pink on a canvas, and then that was it. And you know, that's the kind of thing that definitely happens in the art world, or I mean, people think that it happens, but those artists are usually less successful than people who are doing abstract works and producing things that aren't really, you know, recognizable as any kind of representative artwork, but they're still representing some kind of idea. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. And a good place to start with that is to actually abstract from an image or a form that is recognizable in this world. So the artwork that you see on the right, it's an album cover, but it's done by another contemporary artist, Kate Gibb. And as you can see with this image, it's very abstract. There's patterns and colors that you wouldn't expect to see in real life. It's not something that looks like anything, but there is this connection to the silhouette of a person's head. And so that connection is enough to develop different layers of meaning for different people who see this. And it also gives people maybe a starting off point. So another reason why a lot of abstract work is a little bit hard to access is because there's all this theory that goes into it. And so when you are working with abstraction, especially when you're first starting to work with it, it can always be good to have some visual connection. And that is what we're going to be doing in this exercise. All right, so this exercise, I'm going to be having everyone abstract from a self-portrait and then to develop 3 different layers of color and shapes. So you're going to be working with at least 3 different colors. And for this exercise, I want you to keep every color on a different layer. And we're also going to be working with using selections from a guide layer. And we did that a little bit in the modules previous to this, but we're going to continue to work with that because it is a really powerful operation of Photoshop, and it's a really powerful part of using layers in Photoshop. Okay, so I'm going to go over here to my self-portrait, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this, actually, I'm going to copy it and paste it And then I'm going to make this black and white. So I want everyone to start from a black and white image because you're actually going to be using the self-portrait primarily to develop your pattern. And then you're going to be choosing 3 different colors at least to apply to that pattern. So I'm not asking people to take colors from their self-portrait, more just the shapes that we're going to be working with. So I've turned this into black and white, and now I'm going to use an effect to create the guide layer that I'm going to be using to develop my pattern. So I'm going to go up here to filter. I'm going to go down to pixelate, and I'm going to select crystallize. So there's a couple of different options within pixelate, and the color halftone, for example, produces, I'll do it really quickly, it produces a series of circles, and also it's taking color and developing kind of a 4-color offset pattern. But because I want to work more with polygons for this, I'm not going to use that. And I'm going to go and again go to pixelate and go to crystallize. So this little dialog box opens up, and probably if you haven't used this tool before, it's going to be set to default, which is a very small cell size. And what this is doing is this is taking whatever you have selected, and in this case it's the full image, and turning it into a mosaic of different shaped polygon cells that all fit together. And you get this very texturized look. So what I actually want to do with this is I want to make a more abstract pattern from this. So I'm actually going to make the cell size larger. So I don't want to really be able to recognize that this is particularly my face or even a face, but I just wanted to have that very, very subtle connection to it. So I'm going to up that cell size. So it's cutting down on the resolution. I think I like that there, so I'm going to say OK. Okay, so now I have this interconnected matrix of these polygonal forms, and I'm going to be using these to base selections on, and then I'm going to be applying color to those selections in different layers. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make 3 new layers. So I'm going to go over to the layers panel, and I'm going to 1, 2, 3. So these are where my 3 different colors are going to sit, and I'm actually going to rename these now so that I know what they are. Okay. So then I'm going to go back to this base layer, layer 1, and I'm going to select my magic wand tool. So instead of using the quick selection tool, the magic wand tool is a little bit better at selecting single fields of color. So the quick selection tool is really great when you're working with photographs, so things that have a lot of variation of color and different color pixels. And what it does is it can look at an image and say, okay, this looks like these should go together. The magic wand tool is a little bit more direct, where it just goes, you click it into a single color, a single field of color, and then it just finds every single pixel of that color that's connected. And you can see as I'm clicking through, so one of the features or parameters of this tool that you can change that will really affect the amount of selection that you get is up here in the tolerance. So right now I have it set very low. So what a low tolerance does is it says, okay, you're only going to select the pixels that are really similar to the one pixel that you're selecting. And you can see the lower the tolerance, the smaller the area of the selection. Now, when I up this up to 30, and I think that might be the default setting, you see then it's looking at still darker pixels, but it's not really making as much of a discrepancy here. So it's gotten the darker pixels, and if I select this, it'll get probably all the medium pixels, but it's definitely being a lot less picky. And that's because it's saying, okay, now I'm just going to look at the 30 closest pixels in color to this pixel, and I'm going to select all of those that are touching this pixel. So for the first layer, I'm going to actually set this to a higher tolerance because I want to create kind of a base layer that is going to have a larger area of color. When you're using these tools, any selection tool, if you hold down Shift, you can make selections in multiple parts. So right now, I'm trying to select primarily the darker areas. That might be too dark, so I'm going to do that. Going to do that. All right, and then I'm going to bring this down a little bit just to get a couple more spots for this first layer. All right, okay, so now I have this selection, but right now I have layer 1 selected. So if I apply any changes or any color to this, it's going to disrupt whatever pixels I have selected in layer 1. So I want to make sure to go onto to select that first layer. It doesn't take away the selection. And now, because I have this color 1 layer selected, any changes I make are going to be applied only to that layer, which right now is completely transparent and there's nothing on it. I'm going to then fill this. I'm going to go with a blue. All right. Okay. And so another thing that happens when you are when you're first making or adding things to a layer for the first time and you have a selection, even if these different selections aren't all touching, if you apply a fill to that, it will send the fill to the entire selection. That's what I wanted to do. So I'm going to keep that like that. All right. So now I'm going to make that transparent, or I'm going to make that invisible for a second so I can go back to my guide layer and then continue to make selections and add some different colors. All right, so now I'm trying to get most of the midtones. All right, I'm going to go back to color 2, and then this one I'm going to do in an orange. And then I'm going to make sure that I have the right layer selected. Okay, so now I'm going to combine these two. So now I'm going to start playing around with the blending mode, and just to see what happens with these different layers if I am changing the blending mode here. So now I've changed these both to multiply, which we talked about in the modules previous. And what that does is that takes the white fill out of any of the colors, and it acts as though the colors are still showing, but they're transparent. So any colors that are on top of each other will mix, and you can see that happening here with the orange and the teal are mixing together to form this green. And then also any black or darker pixels that are below the areas of color will just come through the color. Okay. And then I'm going to do this last color. I'm going to do this yellow. I'm just going to do that with the highlights. So I'm going to go back to the Magic Wand tool. The shortcut key for that is W. I'm just going to give it a couple of highlights of yellow with color 3. Really bright yellow. Okay. I'm going to look at all of these again. Okay. So now I'm starting to have this abstract pattern of polygons, and then the colors are starting to layer. And there's a couple of other operations with layers that I want to talk about. And again, to show how you can start developing more depth and a little different levels of images within a same composite image. So let's say I want to add color to the background. So I'm going to go with this blue. I'm going to use the eyedropper tool, which is over here in the toolbar, or you can just press I. And what this does is this chooses the color that it's that it's selecting or that the cursor is being held on anywhere in the canvas, because I want to use that same color, but I want to use a very similar color, but I want it to be a little bit darker. So I'm going to go over here and make it a little bit darker. And then I'm going to go on this layer and make a darker background. So I want that to be, I want the base or guide image to still be showing through. Whoa, and that's very dark. So maybe I want that to be actually lighter. Go and adjust that, okay. And then, okay, great. So that's starting to come through, but I still want to have some areas of white. So once again, I'm going to go back to that base image. I'm going to hide all these layers, and I'm going to pull out the areas where I want the white to be coming through, or the very light areas to be coming through. And then I'm actually going to delete those areas from this large background field of blue that I just did. So again, making sure I use this guide layer, layer 1 as my guide layer to develop these selections. And then I'm making sure to then select this background layer, which I'm going to change to background blue color. And then I'm going to delete that. So now I'm getting these areas of the white from the guide layer showing through. And the last thing I'm going to show you how to use with layers, another operation to use with layers that can be really useful, is the duplicate. So we went over this a little bit. I'm going to show it again. You can either select all in a layer, copy and paste, and then you get another layer. So Photoshop automatically makes another layer. But the layer itself, it's not retaining any of the opacity or even the position. Photoshop puts that new layer in the direct center of the canvas. And then another thing that you can do is you can left or right click on it, or control click if you're on a keyboard, and then go up to duplicate layer. And then I'm going to call this color to copy. Actually, that's what it is. And what that does is that it retains the blending mode, and it also retains the position. So deselect, and then I'm going to move that around. And then you can start to see how this starts to give that layer a sense of depth. And this is, again, is depending on what kind of blending layer you're using. When I go back to normal, it's almost as if that layer below it is its shadow. And then I can continue to make that emphasis. For instance, if I decide to blur that layer below, or as I continue to play with different blending modes. Okay, so this is a good starting off point for everyone to begin working with their own portrait. And again, for this project, using at least 3 different layers of color, and then you're abstracting from a base layer your self-portrait. And for this assignment, as you're finishing it, make sure to save the Photoshop file, make sure to retain the layers, and then follow the posted instructions to export and submit. And for this particular assignment, it's especially important to save that Photoshop file, because we're going to be using that Photoshop file in the next exercise.